So you you're in school now, right?
Yep, I'm in college. Yep,
Where?
I'm a junior at Iowa State University.
Okay.
It's in Ames, Iowa. So yeah, I'm a junior studying. It's my technically this is my second day of my junior year. I'm a semester ahead, studying industrial technology.
Okay.
So it's like a very hands-on engineering-based program.
Nice. What are you gonna do with that? Do you have plans or just something that seemed interesting or
So I started in mechanical engineering. I wanted to go that route, but I got a semester and a half into ME and realized how much I hated it. It was all very heavy math based, which I'm fine with math. I'm not fine with calculus, and it was very, very calc heavy. And the big thing is everything was based on theory. There's nothing uh, based on practice. So it was, very little hands-on stuff. Everything is on paper, and I'm a very hands-on person. So I talked to my advisor and a couple buddies and transferred into industrial technology, which I will most likely end up in an engineering position somewhere in industry, in a manufacturing environment somewhere. I'm kind of open to opportunity and kind of wherever that path wants to lead me. And
okay.
yeah,
Cool. I did my mechanical engineering degree at NC State well before your time. This was let's say I'd started in 98 and graduated in 2003. So I'm not sure if you were even born by then.
I was born in '03, so yeah, just barely.
Um but yeah, like I remember mechanical engineering was being a very like almost more academic kind of feeling. And I'm glad I ended up where I am now, working. I'm kind of like you, like I like working with my hands and building stuff and things like that. So it was nice to finally get into this realm. Um, I know that when I graduated, I ended up going to the Navy for like 5 years, which I'm glad I did. It was a good experience, and it kind of set me up for other stuff down the road. And long story short, it ended up forming Sparksmith, and now it's become its own big beast of a thing.
Yeah,
But
you guys have definitely grown a lot since I've joined with you. I know that's for sure.
yeah, it's interesting. You were one of the earliest sponsors that we brought on, I think. I know Joey Clark was the first one. Have you ever met him or talked to him at all?
I haven't met him in person, but I have talked to him a few times. So it's funny you bring up Joey Clark because that was like for the longest time I refused to download TikTok. I didn't want anything to do with it. I'm like, this is
Mm-hmm.
just a fad. I don't want to deal with it.
Yep.
Whatever. Well, I finally downloaded TikTok right about the time I bought the truck I have now, and Joey's cat eye was like the first cat eye I saw that I really really liked, and I was just getting my build started. I'm like, I want to do that, and like took a lot of inspiration from Joey right off the bat, and then kind of made it into my own thing after a while. But yeah, so I've talked to Joey a few times.
It's yeah, and I we're gonna bring him on at some point too and do one of these. So I know he lives a little further out west in Wyoming, I think.
I think he's in Utah.
Is he? Okay.
It's
That's
either
some
yeah, one of those two, the Wyoming and Utah. I'm pretty sure it's Utah.
um yeah, no, it's been interesting to kind of see where you guys live across the country. And then there's one like Dimitri Kochan who's
Oh,
so
I love Dimitri. Dimitri and I are really close.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um
Yep.
he's got some really killer content with all his sleds and stuff when he gets out in the snow. I'm a little
Oh
jealous.
yeah.
Where we are, we're in Western North Carolina, kind of near Asheville, and it doesn't really snow here much.
Hmm.
It's cold for here, like it was down in the single digits today. I'm sure it's much colder where you are. Um, y'all are probably in the negative or below zero.
Uh,
Is it?
well, today's a warm day and it is currently 20 degrees. The last 4 days or so, it didn't get above zero. There
Okay.
were wind chills down below -40.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was a rough few days, but it feels like a heat wave now. I can walk outside in a sweatshirt and it's comfortable now. So
Nice. Yeah, no, I've been in -10, -20. That's about the coldest I've ever seen it. And that was in Colorado years ago, but yeah, I don't envy you there. But
yeah, it sucks.
um yeah, so that's kind of you and me. And one thing I wanted to talk about was TikTok. I know obviously that was kind of a big event for you. Just not only obviously the building of it, but then of course when TikTok was just like, guess what? Today you don't have what you had yesterday, and it was you had what
Yeah.
140,000 followers, something like that.
I was at 131.5 thousand followers, and I had a few like live violations, whether it's just stuff that's been said or whatever AI's picked up, and most of them, I'd get there's a handful I'd get appealed, they'd take it off, and it'd be whatever done.
Hmm.
I'd had a handful of videos taken down. I mean, I had over 600 videos posted, so it's a given you're gonna have one or two taken down. I think I had three total ever taken down. Um, and last year, for about 6 months, I had it popped up with an account warning. And it never gave me a reason for what the account warning was for, but that went away. I behaved myself and everything. And then I was actually sitting right here in my bed. I Snapchatted somebody and then opened up TikTok, and then it popped up with your account has been permanently banned. I was literally speechless.
Oh
I was
god.
like, now what? And try to go through it, and I clicked OK, and my whole account just poof went away, and it put me on my second account, and it wouldn't let me log back in. It took me 2 weeks to get all my data downloaded, and between the requests and all that kind of stuff, and actually getting it took me 2 weeks to get all my data.
Yeah.
And they make that the most painful process because they give you links for every single thing. So I have all my data downloaded, but every single video had its own link, every single comment had its own link, every single sound that I've saved had its own link. I think there's over 600 videos. There was thousands of comments that I saved, thousands of sounds that I saved, everything.
Gee.
And yeah, so I had this second account that I've kind of got going again. I've had it for probably since March of 23. I saw some other guys that I knew that kind of had like not backup accounts, but like a behind the scenes account. So I started one like that, posted a few videos on it, and then kind of gave up on it.
Hmm.
I didn't have a lot of time to run it. And so I had a little over 1,000 followers to start, and then within a week, I was already over like 15,000 followers on this new account, and it's still growing pretty steadily. And my views are still pretty decent, but it's definitely not what it was.
That's insane. And they never gave you any like real reason
The
about.
only yeah, the only reason that they gave me for getting my account permanently banned was too many violations. But I hadn't had any violations in a long time, and the ones that I did have were resolved. And yeah, so
Welcome to the world of social media these days. It's kind of a crazy thing. Because I know where we are now, people like you and Joey Clark are a big reason that Sparksmith is still in business, honestly, because we kind of hit a real low point. We were for up until 2020, we were mostly a reseller of other people's products, primarily
yep,
stuff from the retrofit source. Their Morimoto brand, and they had acquired Xenon Depot and GTR lighting and like a bunch of other. So it was this retrofit source had grown from this kind of grassroots. These two guys in, I think they started in like Iowa or Indiana or something like that, and they eventually moved. It got big enough that they moved down to Atlanta, and the brand just grew and grew and grew. And then in 2019, we did almost 500,000 with them in at wholesale cost. Um, and then in 2020, they got a new CEO, and they just kind of put the brakes on all the dealers because they had this huge dealer network. And then all of a sudden they were like, wait a minute, we can sell this stuff ourselves and make more money than letting the dealers do it. That's my assumption. I never saw anything official on paper, but just this is kind of Brandon's perspective on they the the CEO was doing his job. He was making sure that Retrofit Source made as much money as they could, but
yep,
involved taking people like me and saying, "Hey, realize that the bulk of your business is selling on places like eBay and Amazon, but you can't do that anymore." So there was a point where I wasn't really sure I was going to make payroll, and then I had just recently downloaded or created a TikTok account for the business, and we started getting tagged, and these grill bars started selling left and right. And I was like, where is this coming from? And eventually we found Joey had bought one, just found it on the internet one day and bought it and put it on his truck. And then all those videos that he makes,
mm.
people were like, hey, where'd you get that? And so it just, that is kind of what led us into where we are today. Like if you look at like if you graphed out like sales over time, there was a drop, and then right about the time Joey picked up our stuff, it just you can see almost an immediate uptick. And so when we're like, when I realized that the power of social media and stuff is when we started trying to find other people, and you, my friend, have been such an incredible um champion of our products. Like I can't ever thank you enough. Like it's
More than happy to support that. Yeah.
um, I'm here and I've got 3 people gainfully employed and we're staying busy and things are growing. So yeah, it's been a journey, but it's been a good one. I've learned a lot, and we've been able to kind of grow a Sparksmith brand instead of just being like a guy who sells other people's stuff.
Yeah.
That's been really neat.
It's real quick. It's kind of funny you bring up like right when you got Joey on, and then I came on shortly after that. With my truck and my build, I've always been one to like if I see something else online, I'm gonna go and try and figure out how to make it myself first. And if I fail at doing that, then I'll go spend the extra money to go do that. So the first time I saw grill bars, I went to your guys' website, and I was a senior in high school at that time. And I had a little bit of money, but I didn't have a lot to throw around.
Yeah,
And I think what were they, like $250 or something?
yeah,
Those like right when they came out. And in my head, I'm like, man, I have a really hard time spending $250 on these grill lights. So I'm like, I'm gonna see if I can make something. So I got on Amazon and I ordered the cheap sequential startup LED strips, and then you got a piece of 1/8 inch by I think it was 3/4 inch flat stock, like a big long
yeah.
piece of it. Cut it to length, drilled the holes in the middle of it, got it all mounted up and everything, got it all wired. I've always loved wiring, and got them put in. And then, I started posting with it, and then same thing. I started having people ask, "Hey, where'd you get this? Hey, where'd you get this?" Well, I'm telling them, "Well, I built it. I made these." And I think that's about the time I reached out to you guys, and I was like, "Hey, in my mind, I'm like, I could get you guys some business here." I have a lot of people ask me where these are at, and I think it's kind of funny because I don't know if it was you I was talking to directly, but we went back and forth a few times about trying to get me on with a sponsorship. And I didn't have a lot of money to spend, and I didn't want you to lose money. So actually, I bet you I have our chat open right now. Oh, it'd take a while. Um,
It's been a minute ago.
yeah, it was a while ago, but I remember we went back and forth a few times on trying to work out a deal to bring me on as a sponsor. And eventually, I think we agreed on a certain percent above your cost, just so you weren't losing any money. And
Yeah,
then I got him put in, and then same thing, started going after it. And I also remember in that initial conversation we had talked about, if I make enough sales, you can bring me on with a commission deal and all that kind of stuff. And then I had that pretty quick. I know that.
yeah. And
Because
you, so far, you have been the only one we've that has like hit that mark. And I didn't think like $1,000 would be too terribly hard of a mark to hit, but and I don't know if there's a lot of factors that go into that. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that all that stuff's working out for you, and I think I've definitely had a lot of people say, "Oh, I can do it cheaper myself," but like the benefit of what we have is it's such a turnkey thing, especially with the wiring, because most people aren't like you and me where they like to get in there and fiddle with the wires. They just want something that like plugs up, and so
yeah, so
um,
that's the big thing that I tell people as well is, if you go through Sparksmith, sure, you might be able to buy something similar on Alibaba or eBay or Amazon or something like that. Sure, you can find maybe a similar product like the 1.0 bars, but doing that, you're not going to get the customer support that Sparksmith offers. You're not going to get the warranty that Sparksmith offers, and they're not going to be plug and play. That's the big thing. Like I've had some people ask me, well, how do you wire them? I'm like, they're totally plug and play, and then they'll go buy a set using my discount code and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's a great selling point. So
so
it's
tell me about
definitely go
what
ahead.
was that? No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's definitely a lot easier to sell a product when one I've used it and I like it a lot. It's a lot easier for me to sell something. Like my brother's in sales, my dad's been in sales his whole life, so it kind of runs in the family to be a natural salesman.
Nice.
But yeah, being able to sell something's a lot easier when I can use it and I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about your truck. What year is yours?
So my truck, it's a 2007 Chevy Silverado 1500 HD Classic. It's kind of a weird trim from GM. the heavy half. So it's a 6.0, it's a 480, it's a 95% 3/4 ton truck. There's a few small differences here and there that I won't get the nitty gritty of. But I bought it from my dad in cash my junior year of high school, and I had absolutely no plans to do any of this stuff to it. My only plans for that truck was to fix the rust on it, maybe a small lift kit and some cheap black wheels and some big like 35-inch tires, and some window tint, maybe clear headlights, LED bulbs, just very run of the mill, simple things to do to a truck and leave it. And then, like I said earlier, I downloaded TikTok and I saw Joey's truck, and I'm like, that's really cool. So I bought my first set of rock lights off of Amazon, which most of which are still on the truck today. They've done really, really well, surprisingly. Put those on, I was still on stock wheels and stock tires. Threw the rock lights on, and I was like, okay, this is cool. And then just started doing more and doing more. And doing more, and it's seriously snowballed. And this last winter, about a little over a year ago, it really took a big turn because I had all the fancy rock lights and wheel lights and the fancy headlights and the grill bars and door handles and all the switchbacks and that kind of stuff, and I wanted to take it to the next level. And I had a buddy in town, my hometown, who said he would help me powder coat stuff. And I was like, that's like in my head, that's the next step to being a show truck is powder coat suspension.
Yeah.
And so he was like, well, tear the truck down. He goes, whenever you pick out a color, let me know. I'll order it for you. So I'll make you do all the labor. I'll spray them and bake them. I'm like, all right. He told me like $800 to powder all my suspension. And I'm like, that's a good deal. So got everything torn down. Like I had the truck sitting on jack stands. There was only drivetrain left was a motor and trans. Everything else was out from underneath the truck, no suspension, everything. And then I told him I wanted the Illusion Gambler for my powder coat color. Which here now, let me grab. I have a little custom built trophy case.
Oh, nice.
This is that Illusion Gambler color.
Yeah, that green.
It's a really, really sparkly green. It's a really pretty color. And I mean, it took me weeks to pick out this color because I wanted something that not everybody else did, but I wanted something that was going to look really good. And so I would go on Prismatic's website and just start from scratch and just look through colors and then save a couple and then come back a few hours later and do it again. And I did that for weeks and landed on lots of different shades of green and some reds and some blues. So I ordered a bunch of swatches, which I actually still have my original swatch that I ordered, and landed on Illusion Gambler. So I told him, hey, I want to do Illusion Gambler. And he was like, ooh, okay. And I'm like, what do you mean, ooh, okay? And he's like, well, I'm not really comfortable doing illusion colors, especially one like that. And I said, well, this is a big project to not be comfortable on. And so I started reaching out to some other powder coaters in the area. I bet I messaged 30 different shops all around Iowa and bordering states, and had a shop get back to me from Des Moines, which is actually just south of me now, and said they'd take on the project. And then I brought up the whole social media thing. I think at the time I was like 80,000, 90,000 followers, and got a pretty good deal worked out with them to do some social media work and everything. And yeah, got everything dropped off and powdered. And then this last winter has definitely been like the biggest learning curve of working on the truck because I've never taken a truck apart that far, like drivetrain wise. Like I've done all my own body work and paint, which that's a whole different ball game than mechanical work. But yeah, so got everything torn apart, got everything powder coated. It looked absolutely amazing. And the really funny part is when I got all my powder stuff back, looking at it on pallets, it looked really, really good. I was super excited. And then I got everything put in the shop. I have pictures of all this too. That everything put in the shop in front of the truck, and I'm like, ooh, I might have made a mistake here. This might not look good. And so I got the whole rear put together, all the leaf springs, my train horns, the air tank, and all that stuff. No bed on the truck yet. And I'm like, man, this might not look good, but I'm too far to turn around now.
Yeah, you're committed at that point.
Yeah, and I'm pot committed. So I have a picture of it. I put one upper control arm in so I could see some color of the truck around it. Put it in, turn all my lights on, I step back and look at it. And I fell in love. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna look really, really good.
Yes.
And yeah, put everything together. the day I pulled the truck out of the shop, it was February 19th of 23. The day I pulled out of the shop, and there were zero issues. I went through almost 2 tanks of gas that night and the next day to try to shake down everything. Zero. The only issue was an alignment, which I fully expected because I'm pulled off suspension parts. But other than that, there were absolutely zero issues with putting it back together. So I was like very, very proud of myself. And then also the same thing that changed this last winter was the whole strobe system, which is kind of what I'm known for, is all the strobe lights.
Yeah.
I don't have the original paper with me, but there was one day at work, I sat down. Well, I originally did my wheel lights. I saw a video of somebody that had strobing wheel lights, and I'd never seen it before. I'm like, I want to do that. So I did some research. I found a strobe controller that I liked and figured out, okay, how can I make this work? Ended up going with a relay to do it, which I know you and I talked about that before.
Yeah, you'd send me pictures of diagrams and stuff with your setup, and it's a 24-volt setup.
Yeah, so the wheel lights are 24 volts. Yeah, so it's kind of weird in the way the wheel lights are working with the strobes, because there's a step up, and I have that step up controlling the strobe controller, which controls a bank of relays, which controls the rest of the lights. So it's kind of it's a weird setup, but it works really well, and I've had very little issues with it. So I had the strobe and wheel lights before I tore the truck apart. I'm like, how can I take this to the next level? So then I came up with a new wiring diagram, which I'm sure someone's done it before, but I didn't ask anybody for help. I came up with it all on my own. Whole new wiring diagram for all the lights on the truck. So I rewired everything. And I have a picture of it sitting all up on my windshield. I had the hood pulled off the truck. Everything sitting on the windshield, all the relays and the strobe controller and everything. And tried it for the first time, and everything worked. And I was also very astonished that it all worked on the first try. That took me almost a full weekend just to wire that stuff in. But yeah, that was definitely the big turning point in the truck was that the strobe lights, the full strobe lights, and then the powder coat. And then let's see, a few months after that, I remember we were talking back and forth a little bit, and you had brought up getting a new set of headlights and a whole new style of headlights, and I was really excited for it. So then, yeah, I'd asked you, I said, hey, if I'm going to get these, I want to paint them. Because I've been wanting to do paint match headlights for a while, but I wasn't totally sold on it. And then the opportunity came about to get the ones that you were coming out with. So got those opened up, or you sent them to me opened up. Yeah, that was really nice.
So that was something, and it had never dawned on me to even just ask the question. Because most manufacturers are reluctant to send stuff that's unsealed because then it becomes a warranty issue or whatever. And I asked this company and they were like, yeah, sure. How many do you want?
That's awesome.
So that was the first unsealed set. And I think they went straight to you. I don't think I even got my hands on them. But now I've got 5 more sets here of that same style headlight that are unsealed. Actually 4 now, because one's on my truck now, but, it's one thing about a black truck is everything's already paint matched for you.
Yeah. Yep.
Yours looks good though, man, with that body color and the green in the headlights. Like that thing looks perfect.
Yeah, that was something I had to wrap my head around. Is since there are no clear reflectors yet for those headlights, I'm like, I can't have orange reflectors. There's nothing. Yeah. It doesn't match a single thing in this truck. I'm like, what am I gonna do to get these to match? I'm sitting there scratching my head thinking about it, and I was like, what if I painted them the same color as my powder coat? So actually, I took this train horn. I have a paint guy at home, and he's very, very talented mixing paint. He's done all my paint for me. Nice. I brought him that, and I said, hey, Chuck, I need you to mix me this paint. He's like, ooh. And I'm like, I know, it's a tough one. So I'll bring you a case of whatever you want. Said, it doesn't have to have all the flake, but I need the shade at least correct. He's like, all right. He'll come back at the end of the day. I'll have something for you. I'm like, all right. I didn't even bother to ask him what it's going to cost because I didn't care. I had to have it.
Right.
So I came back at the end of the day, and I have a picture of it. He got it spot on. Like you could not tell the difference between the powder coat and the paint at all. That's now amazing. The downside is it was a pint, so a little pint can of PPG Designer Series paint. It was $146 for a pint. So it was not cheap, but it matches really, really well.
That's money well spent though. Like to
100%.
To have somebody on your side that can do that kind of stuff, like those kind of people and that kind of talent are kind of like you say, you're talking about taking the truck to the next level. When you get those start getting those little details right, like that stuff really adds up.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
so are the tail lights matched as well, or are those?
Yeah, so the taillights, those are actually the first set of lights I've ever built were my taillights.
Sure.
I'd been wanting to do a set for a long time on the truck, but I didn't want to pay. I'm not going to name companies, but I didn't want to name. Right, I didn't want to pay companies over $1,000 for a set of taillights.
Yep.
So I ordered a set of clear ones, identical to the ones I had on the truck before, which were smoked. They're the same style, just a clear lens. And what I did is I actually broke and tore apart my old set to figure out how they were sealed, so I could figure out how to open them up.
Yeah.
And then my buddy's kitchen here in Ames, we opened up my taillights and then painted them with a rattle can in his basement. Cause I didn't, at the time, I didn't have any of my paint stuff with me. You know, I'm at college, I'm living out of a dorm. It just, you know, it wasn't feasible to do it at school, but I didn't have any other choice. So I did it in his basement.
Nice.
And, you know, being a rattle can paint job, they don't look the best, but for being my first ever set of lights, they look pretty good. And then, you know, that was my first set. And since then I've done a couple dozen more sets, and, you know, they've gotten better and better and better. So
I hate opening tail lights. Like I've sworn it off. I've passed up so many taillight jobs over the past couple of years. I just, because I did it. The last set I built was actually for my truck, and I love them and they came out great. But I think I broke like 3 lenses. I had to buy
yeah,
like 3 sets because they're so fragile
yeah.
compared
So
to like,
the last set of taillights I tried to do, I actually couldn't get open. I broke 2 plastic tabs off of the side of the taillight, like the part of the edge of the lens,
yeah.
but it wasn't beyond the seal. And, you know, I'm in college, I don't have a lot of money, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try and fix this before uh I buy a new one. And they're from one of my close buddies. He's a red truck, red cat eye that he's starting to build. And so I ended up getting some plastic weld epoxy, and then got him epoxied back together and then sanded completely flat. And then he wanted them painted anyways. And I told him I couldn't get them open, so I painted all the way around the edge, which perfectly covered up where they broke. And I didn't tell him I broke them until I like was 100% positive he was never going to be able to find it. And I reached that point after I laid primer and I couldn't even find where I broke it. And I'm like, okay,
Nice.
these are going to be just fine. So, I was on a TikTok live and I said something about I broke these taillights and he was on it. But right after I said that, I ended the live. So he started freaking out. He called me. He goes, "Did you break my taillights?" I said, No. I did, but they're fixed. You'll never know. And yeah, I showed him. I actually showed him where I broke them at. And he goes, "Yeah, you can't tell at all." I said, "Well, I spent some time fixing them."
Yeah, and I tried to do that on one set that one of the last sets that I built for a customer is it cracked off just a little piece, and I was
Mhm.
able to get it back on there. And the same thing, we were painting the insides, and then around the outside we were doing a body match, and same thing, like except I couldn't get it, like it had cracked in a way that I couldn't get it to be flush. I think I actually ended up buying another set of taillights to try and fix it, but after that I was just like, I
Yeah,
got
taillights are
other
definitely a hard
things
one to
to
do.
I got other things to occupy my time than this headache. Um,
Headlights are a piece of cake though, especially when they're
yeah.
the black beetle sealant. I have this tool from Harbor Freight. It's a body panel popper tool. So you
Hmm.
squeeze them together and the two
Yeah, like
things spread
reverse
apart.
pliers. Yeah.
Oh, those things are awesome. There's like an $8 tool from Harbor Freight. Best
Yeah,
purchase I've ever made for opening lights. It makes it so easy.
absolutely. That and a good heat gun. I've gotten away from the oven method. I haven't used my oven in years. I've gotten to where I use a heat gun, and if I can't heat gun them open, I just cut them. In fact, I
Yep.
just this morning I resealed a set of Audi. I think it's an A7 or no, an S7. This guy wanted to paint match the inside of the lights and get rid of the chrome and stuff, but I tried opening one with like the heat gun and stuff, and it just wasn't happening. The permaseal was just too much, so I ended up cutting the second one open, um, which makes it way easier to open them, but resealing becomes its whole.
Hey, how do you reseal after you cut? Because I did that one set that you guys cut for me, and I mean they've worked, but I'm curious to see how you do it.
So usually if I cut them, well, I'll use black RTV, and what I'll do is, once you cut them open, you get everything cleaned up and you're ready to seal them back up. I'll put the lens onto the housing, um, without any sealant, and then I'll add clips. Like on this one, I had like those little spring clips that kind of go on the outside edge. I
Yep.
keep tons of those around from old headlights and stuff. People my employees always give me grief because I keep everything. It's just a habit. But in my defense, they are very occasionally useful. Like if you break a part inside a headlight, I've got 6 more headlights over there that probably have the same part inside them. Or like these little clips and stuff like that. And so what I'll do is I'll set the lens on there and put enough clips on that the lens can't, like I can shake the headlight and the lens won't come off with just the clips. And then it's mechanically secured. So all I have to do is seal it. So take everything back off, put a big old wad of RTV on there, and it'll squish out what it doesn't need, and you can trim it off with a razor blade. So,
Yep.
That to me has been the method that works if you're going to cut them open. And if you're dealing, and there are some vehicles, I'm trying to think. I think it was a newer Silverado, like a 2018, 2019 Silverado, where whatever they used to seal the lens to the headlight had actually chemically bonded with the plastic of the headlight housing, and like it was no longer, you couldn't distinguish epoxy from the ABS plastic of the housing. It was like it was all one solid piece, and it was like you can't separate it, so I had to cut them open. And that's kind of what got me into the cutting method for those kind of headlights, because it sometimes you have to. But yeah,
Yeah.
if they're butyl, or if they're like ours where they're not even sealed yet, is sealing
It's
those
piece of cake.
that was really satisfying, taking a set that's never been sealed and sealing them up and just feeling that everything like click into place, and you're like, did it.
Yeah. So yeah, I did that set of white headlights for Alex Valentini.
Yeah.
They're the HID ones from you guys. And that was my first set I'd ever had cut open. So I was a little nervous putting it back together. I ended up cleaning, sanding all the edges, like the very underside of the lens and the edge where it was cut. Sanded all those so there's a nice surface, and then same thing. I got plastic weld epoxy and did a little tiny line of epoxy all the way around, and then put the lens down with some weight on top of it, and let it fully cure. And one of the headlight lenses I grabbed with both my hands and pulled on it as hard as I could, and it didn't come apart. So,
Nice.
and then with my headlights, I actually ran into a little issue when I was resealing them, or sealing them for the first time, I suppose. Oh, let me back up. So I took them apart, I painted the housings, and I kind of put everything back together. And you could see on the outside edge where like the projector housing comes off with like the back housing, you
Yeah.
could still see that black outline all the way around it. So it was like 2 a.m. and I'm spraying primer and spraying paint, getting these back housings painted too, so they matched. And then put the lenses back in. And I used to use black RTV to seal everything,
Yeah.
but with the way those lenses are set up, where that channel is for the sealant, same thing. You would see that black line all the way on the outside. So I ended up going to get it's Permatex clear silicone RTV,
Okay.
and that's what I do all my headlights with. I've done my taillights with them, all the headlights, everything, and I've never had an issue. I've never had it leak or anything. Never had it pull apart, and it's clear. So especially with a truck like mine, where you don't want to have that black line around your headlights, if you look at it like real close, you can see that clear RTV. But if you're not looking for it, you're never gonna find it. So
Yeah.
it worked out really well.
Awesome. I'll keep that in mind, because there are occasions where you're like, it's just not, the butyl just isn't the right answer there.
Yeah.
And like we've got it comes in gray as well, and sometimes that's the right answer. I found actually gray is a lot less common. Usually it was on like Japanese imports and stuff like that, especially from the 90s. They all like to use gray butyl for some reason. But yeah, no, the headlights, the stuff I've seen on those, they look fantastic. Of course, I'm going to show you a video of mine. Have you seen the ones that I showed on the live the other day?
Yeah, with the white
Illuminating?
startup.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
love those.
I'm really happy with how those turned out. I've actually got them listed on the website already, for people if they want to go and buy a set, but it's basically a custom build that we do here in the house. And all I do is I actually take the 14-inch grill bars and extract the LED strip from inside that casing, and then just lay those inside the headlight essentially, and then wire them up.
Yeah, so I did a set of headlights very similar to that same method. It was the same guy did those taillights for my good buddy. He wanted startup animation switchback strips in the headlight bars, and he had just the regular C-bar headlights.
Okay.
And so I ordered some switchback strips online to the right length and everything, and then same thing. I cut the actual LED strip out of the housing and then laid it in there, and they turned out really, really nice, and they match the truck spot on. And he's got to fix some other things in the truck before he puts them on. But I'm really excited to see him on his truck, because
Yeah.
they look really good. But same method, yeah.
And so we are like, and extracting the strips is probably the most painstaking part of that whole process, just trying to get them out without breaking them because those wires are so delicate. We actually are going to be getting just the bare PCB strips from the manufacturer that's making the 2.0s. We're going to order a whole batch of just the bare strips so we can do stuff like this without, like, I can just pull it off a shelf and set it inside the headlight and not have to deal with that 45-minute process of getting, because in those headlights it uses 3 pairs of strips, so you got to extract 6 of them successfully and not screw it up, which means you're gonna, do 7 or 8. But I've got a shop minion who does most of that for me, at least, so I can do other stuff like this. But so what's next for the truck? Anything? Because did you do airbags yet?
Yeah, so I did rear bags in the truck, which I kind of did that in a really cheater way. When you do bags, you're either supposed to do overload bags with a full set of leaf springs just to help with like load distribution and load leveling.
Yeah.
Or actual suspension bags with a 4-link or triangulated 3-link rear to keep your axle centered. Like I said earlier, I'm a broke college student, so I make do with what I've got. And I had a sponsor reach out, and they wanted to send me an overload bag suspension set, and I'm like, well, I don't ever pull with the truck. I'm like, what could I do with these? I'm like, what if I pulled leaf springs so my suspension was really soft, but kept enough in there to keep the axle centered, and then put these bags in on my own air management setup so I could have adjustable rear suspension. So I did exactly that. The truck came factory with five leaf springs in each pack. I pulled 3 of the 5 on both sides, and when I tested it for the first time and set the truck down its own weight, the springs went all the way flat and the truck was on bump stops. So there was enough spring there to keep the axle centered, but not enough to support the weight of the truck, which is what I wanted. So then the majority of the weight goes on those overload bags. So it's not actually a proper suspension bag. It's purely meant for overload, but they're rated for 5,000 pounds, which, like I said, I hardly ever pull with the truck, so it's not a big deal. And then I've gone through now 3 renditions of an air management setup. Originally, I just had 2 solenoids. I had a solenoid for air in and a solenoid for air out, coming to a T. And then I decided, well, the bags inflate too fast when the air tank's aired all the way up, because my air tank inflates or fills up to 200 psi to run the train horns. So then I put a regulator on the inlet and regulated that to like 80 psi, so the bags can't go over that and they go up much slower. And then I'm like, well, I want the bag to drop faster. So then I ripped all that out and then added another solenoid. So now I have 2 solenoids to let air out. Those are both fed with 3/8 line. And then I have a regulated solenoid coming in with 1/4-inch line to feed the bags. And it doesn't leak. Everything works really, really well. And same thing, it's one of those things that, I didn't really look anywhere else for inspiration. I kind of just sat down with a pencil and on paper and drew it out and thought about how it's going to work. And yeah, and it worked really, really well. And
hell yeah. What kind of, do you have like a switch panel or something in the cab to control it all, or how's that controlled?
Yeah. So I started originally, I had a 6-gang switch panel. Does your Cat have a center console, like a full center console? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, the little cubby right above the cup holders.
Yep.
It's underneath the AC controls. I originally had a switch panel there, and I had a marine accessory fuse panel underneath, or no, I had that accessory fuse panel in my center glove box. So everything was fused, and then there's that switch panel there running that. Well, I had somebody comment on my TikTok, like, why didn't you just put it under the cup holder? Just let a room underneath there. And I'm like, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah.
So I ripped all that out and then put that whole fuse panel underneath my cup holders right over the factory Bose woofer.
Mm-hmm.
And then this last winter, when I rewired everything, I moved that switch panel up overhead to the sunglasses holder, because I never used that, and I missed having the storage down below. So it's kind of like the newer Fords have that switch panel up above. It's very similar to that. So I have all those switches that run most of the accessories in the truck. And then on the side of my center console, I have a switch for my air compressor. Above that is a little button for the train horns. And then, let's see, on the very side of it next to my leg, there's my strobe controller. So I can select all the different modes and everything on there. And then there is a gauge that I put in with my bag, so I can see tank pressure and bag pressure at all times. And then I have two more little buttons, just an up and a down. So there's no like preset settings. I can't just press a button and have them do their own thing. So you got to manually set everything. But I'm minus the cost of the bag setup, I'm like a couple $100 into it. It's very, very affordable for what it is. And then even if you do factor in an airbag setup and then an air tank and a compressor, you're still under $1,000 to do all of it.
Yeah.
which for an adjustable rear suspension is like, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And I have pulled a couple of trailers with it. I pulled a Jeep Cherokee on a uh, twin axle equipment trailer. So it was like all of probably 8,000 to 9,000 pounds behind the truck, and it pulled it just fine. So
Nice. Nice.
yeah. And then these last couple, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, like, if there's any, have you have you noticed any left right shift of that axle with those springs being down? Okay.
None at all. Nope. Which eventually, the truck's going to get traction bars. It
Okay.
needs it because the biggest thing with having less leaf springs is your axle's more prone to twist
Yeah.
and wrap up. But it's a stock 6 liter. It doesn't make much for power right now.
That's a
That's
good
going to
caveat to
change.
add there.
Yeah, I haven't got to that point yet. That's coming soon. Um, so eventually, when I do go for more power outer stuff, it's gonna need traction bars, and I might just suck it up and do a full 4 link anyways, and then have an actual airbag setup instead of just overload bags and kind of finish that process that I started.
Yeah.
Um, which I'd made a video on my last account, and I'd said in that video, if you make power, you need to have traction bars for this, and I don't recommend towing on it because it's not really what it's meant to be used for. Um, but yeah, I haven't really noticed any shift left and right, but that truck is also on 14 wides and 3-inch spacers in the rear and 2-inch spacers in the front. So it wanders all over the road already, and then it needs steering. It needs an idler arm, pitman arm, steering box. That needs all that stuff. The rest of the front end's all gone through and built. Just the steering, which I have all the parts to do it now. I just need to put them in.
Got the
So once I
sidewalk.
fix that, should be
Like you said, it's a heat wave out there, so you can get out that balmy 20-degree weather and get to wrenching.
yeah. Oh, it'll be a little while yet. Right now, the truck's sitting in storage in my buddy's barn. It currently has no transmission in it.
Oh,
I pulled the trans out a few weeks ago. The torque converter was giving me issues, and I originally was just gonna. Actually have a torque converter sitting right behind me on the floor. I was gonna do a torque converter and then a TCC solenoid, which is the solenoid that controls the clutches inside the torque converter.
yeah.
I was gonna replace those because I think that's where most of my issues is coming from. But I decided not to do that when I drove. I couldn't find my car keys one morning to go to work, so I was like, okay, I'll drive the truck. It's a 20-minute, not even 15-minute drive down the highway. By the time I got there, the trans was at 200 degrees, and then I left work and then came home, and the trans was at 220. So I'm like, okay, this trans needs to come out. It needs to get built because I'm gonna be making more power eventually. I may as well have the trans to back it up. So I texted my buddy when I got home from work, said, hey, what are you doing tonight? He goes, nothing. It says the shop open. He goes, yep. It's all right. We're pulling my trans tonight. So
Today's the day. Yeah.
yep. So I got the
Sometimes
trans
you
pulled.
gotta go ahead.
Good.
So sometimes you just got to pull that trigger and get it done.
Yep. So got that pulled, and then I'm thinking either this upcoming weekend or the next weekend. There's a guy that I found a few hours away from me that's going to build it for me for what I want and for a pretty decent price too. So plan on taking it to him and having it built. I mean, he'll build it to withstand up to 650 horsepower with a warranty. So
Nice.
I'm just gonna get that out of the way. I originally wanted to manual swap the truck. I wanted to put an NV4500 in it because these trucks did come factory with them, so I could use all factory parts to do that. But with where I'm at in life and money, that's not the wisest idea to do right now because that would be a minimum $3,000 to $4,000 swap.
Yeah.
So not really in the budget right now, but maybe eventually.
I did an automatic to manual swap on I've got an old 1970 Mustang. It was actually my daily driver back in my high school days. Still have the car. When I was in college, I started working on it, just kind of like what you've done with your truck. I was just, tearing stuff apart and putting it back together. And I remember the clutch pedal assembly was the hardest part about doing the manual transmission swap because I mean those cars came with a manual and you could just order the pedal and quote unquote bolt it in, but bolting it in required basically removing the entire dash and all of its components, which fortunately in 1970 that's not all that complex compared to what you've got. And hopefully you don't have to remove the entire dash to get the pedal in there if you ever do
Yeah,
it
so
right.
I've got a buddy who he come and swapped and then NV4500 swapped his truck, and it's
Okay.
it's a 2500 non HD, so identical truck to mine. And it's funny because with the clutch assembly or the clutch pedal assembly, there's actually underneath the dash, there's the steel supports. There's a dimple where you got to drill it out and then put a rib nut in there for the clutch assembly and that stuff. Like everything is there. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of putting it in.
Huh.
So it wouldn't be a difficult swap. It would just be expensive. So
Yeah.
yep. And I do have a whole motor build planned out. It's going to go down to, I mean, motor will come out. It'll go down to bare block, get it bored over. a full road. I'll keep the stock crank, but new rods, new pistons, new heads, build the heads, and then actually sitting in a box right here, big old thump stick sitting in a
Ooh, all right.
box.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a stage 3 Texas speed cam. I don't know how much you know about cam specs or anybody watching that knows anything about cam specs. This one is
I know enough to sound like an idiot if I talk about it.
okay. It's a 216 220 with a 600 duration. So that's a lot of duration. So it'll thump. That's for sure. And then with the rest of the motor behind that, I should be right around 500 to the crank, which isn't an insane amount of power. But out of a bored out LQ4, it'll be a, let's see, 4.030 bore and then a 4-inch stroke. So it'll be really torquey down low, and then with the exhaust setup that I have and the heads that I'm going to have, it'll have a lot of power up top. So the power band in that truck will be huge. And being an NA build and lighter than a lot of other trucks, not being a diesel, it'll put some hurting on some people.
Should.
And it's enough to do burnouts and stuff, so it'll be fun.
Is it 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive?
So it's a 4-wheel drive, yeah.
Okay.
Which I've used a 4-wheel drive a handful of times, not a lot, but every once in a while it'll get used.
Sure. Cool. A lot of good stuff coming then. You gotta get out there and get your code used some more so we can pay you some more money. Help you with that engine build fund.
Yeah.
Wow, we've been at it for 45 minutes already. So
holy cow. Yeah, I got a list pulled up here. You got a couple of questions to go through,
yeah. We talked about the truck and where the build is going. And for you, like with your new TikTok, and like you said, you're back up to like 50,000 or so.
I'm like 21,000 followers right now. Yeah, but my Instagram's doing good. My Instagram's about to hit 40,000 followers, so that one's doing really good too. The views there are really really good. So,
no, I think that's interesting that you had the 140,000 followers, but then like to go from nothing up to 20,000 even in the relatively small amount of time that it's been. Like, I think that speaks to the engagement of people that follow you and what you're doing, that they were paying enough attention to be like, hey, where'd he go? I want to go find that guy again.
Yeah, I've always noticed I've had a really solid fan base. That's for sure. Like a bunch of very loyal fans, and like, being my truck's a cat eye, so it blends in a little bit. There's a lot of them out there, but I've done everything I can to make it stand out within all the rest of the cat eyes. There's a lot of things I've done to mine that other people don't have, so it's very very recognizable. Yeah, and I think just for that reason, it's easy for a lot of people to say, "Hey, I know that truck."
Absolutely. Yeah, like the visor how long has the visor been on there? Because that was
yeah, so the visor, I put it on in early August of last year. So did you ever, I don't remember if you ever worked with yeah, you did. Toby, 12 valve Silverado.
Yeah.
So Toby and I are very close friends. And that visor was actually on his truck. It was black at that time, and it's the same guy that manual swapped his truck and was going to help me through it. That visor was on his truck, but he tore down a bare frame and then found a lot more issues than what he thought he had. So he ended up going a different route with it. And I texted him out of the blue one day and said, "Hey, do you still have that visor?" And he goes, "Yeah, do you want it?" I said, "Yeah, I do." And that was right before Volga City Diesel Truck Cruise is a show in Northern Iowa. And there's another one of my buddies coming from down that area. So he stopped at Toby's and picked it up for me. And we held it up over the windshield of my truck. I took a picture of it and I was like, yeah, that's going to look good. So I got it all painted, ordered some new lights, ordered new lenses for it and everything. And then got it put on the roof of the truck, and I stepped back, and the same thing. I was like, ooh, that might not have been a good idea. Well, then I backed the truck out of the shop and stepped back, 50 yards, looked at it. I'm like, okay, this looks really good.
No, I think it looks sharp on there. I like the way it fits.
Oh, it looks really good. The funny part about that visor is it's not actually meant for my truck. It's meant for an 88 to 98 OBS Chevy, which a lot of people don't know. It's an original Lund moon visor, which they don't make them anymore. So it's not the most common thing. Like if you ever see an OBS Chevy with a visor, it's one of those. So they came from factory with them. Lund worked with GM and did that kind of stuff. But it fits the cab really, really well. And Summit Racing makes a fiberglass visor for our style trucks, but they're a little bit different shaped, and I think they're ugly. I don't like the way they look, the way they kind of hover over the windshield, and yeah, I don't like the actual proper style ones, but the OBS style ones fit the cab really well, and they look really nice.
Nice. Well, good find there.
Definitely.
Cool. Yeah, no, and you've got I always love it when your content pops up if I'm just flicking through or whatever. Because it always catches my eye, and then the stuff and it's not always the same thing. It's not, the same. I don't know. There's a lot of variety in it, and it does center around the truck, but there's still a good variety of kind of what's happening in the whole situation, and or like when you team up with some other guys and do like group shots, or you and somebody else rolling around or whatever, like all that stuff is just it's really good engaging content. So we're always happy to be a part of that however we can. I know that we are working on getting a 2.0 version of the brake bars, the red and amber ones.
Yep.
Because I feel bad about those, because every time like I've sold a set, and I'll see like was it you and shoot, Joseph Kaiser.
Yep.
Do you know him?
I know of him. Yeah, we don't talk, but I know him.
His he's got his truck torn completely down right now, but he posted it kind of an older video from back in the fall, and it had like a split-second shot of the ass end of his truck, and it just had two bars. One of them was fully lit, and one of them was like that's like dead spots all the way across. And I was like,
Yep.
ah,
Yeah, say my rear bars have been having some issues too. Which I've been neglecting sending an email to you guys about that. I don't know. I don't have an excuse for it. I just haven't got around to it.
no, that's
But
fine. Like, and I'm happy to send you more. It's the problem is it's probably just going to happen again until we get these 2.0s, and like that's
yeah,
the minimum order is I have to order at least 400 pairs per size.
yeah,
So 400 pairs of brake bars will sit around for a very long time. So I've got to balance that, what I want to do versus what makes financial sense. So
yep,
that's another one that's coming down the line. People asking for like, smoked versions or this or that. And I'm like, I'm happy to do that stuff, but you got to understand the thousands and thousands of dollars I'm going to have to spend to sell you one.
yeah,
Um, it's easy for people to say, "Oh, my buddies are all going to want one of these," but I've heard it so many times and seen so many times that like just nothing ever pans out from it. So I've got to
yep.
weigh all that very, very carefully. But anywho, those are some plans for us in the future. Yeah, I love what you've done with the truck. Um, Sounds like you have done a good bit of engineering and stuff on it, which uh hats off to you for that, because like that stuff, don't take it for granted. That skill set will serve you well in life. um and it can open some doors for you for sure, because it's not something everybody can do, especially the electrical stuff. Like, you really seem to know what you're doing with that, which is impressive.
I love electrical stuff. That's definitely one of my favorite things with anything vehicles is the electrical with it. Yeah,
I'm the same way, and that's kind of what helped me build this business, was just around the electrical stuff and just having a good understanding of it. The Navy actually was a big help for me, because nuclear Navy is there's a surprising amount of electrical involved with all of that. So I was really well versed with it, just going through those ropes. And it just kind of stuck with me ever since. So yeah, that stuff will serve you well. Um, I think, I don't know, did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on? I think we kind of got it all.
yeah. So the one thing we haven't touched in the list that you sent me was what lighting do you love?
Mm,
Um, that's a tough question because there's a lot of different lights on the truck. As you've seen, the I've always said the Starlight is one of my favorite things. As much as it seems to be overdone throughout the truck scene, a good, properly done Starlight, I think always looks awesome. Looks really, really good. Um, but that and then my strobes, definitely my strobe lights that I've done throughout the truck. I've never seen anybody else do strobe lights like I did when I did mine, using the marker lights and the factory lights in the truck and the wheel lights and rock lights. Like, I've seen bits and pieces, but never all of them together.
yeah,
So when I rolled out with that, not only online but in person, those were a huge hit. Everyone loved it. I've had tons of questions of how I did that, and I haven't really built systems for people, but I've kind of coached some people through on how to do it. Um, yeah, the strobes on my truck are definitely probably one of my favorite things.
that is cool. That's very cool stuff. So, and yeah, the Starlight headliners, like I've done one in my career so far, and
It sucks. It's not
yeah,
fun.
it is not a fun process. It's so tedious, but when you get it right, it looks really cool.
Yep.
You see guys who have been doing them for years, and they can make like the shooting star effect and things like that. Like that just blows my mind. Uh,
Yeah. So mine's got shooting stars. It's got
okay.
200 pieces for the shooting stars, and then 1100 just solid color pieces.
Jesus.
It's the second time I've done mine. I did a first kit from Amazon, and it was cheap. And I mean, it looked okay, but my upholstery skills weren't great, so my suede headliner was kind of falling down. And then I had actually Adrenaline Off Road reached out and wanted to work with me and sent me that 1300 piece kit, which going back, I wish I would have done two 550 pieces and then had two control boxes. That way I could have dual color in the headliner.
Yeah.
That's, everyone who asks me if they should do one, I'll tell them the same thing. If you're going to do it, order two smaller kits. So it's easier to manage one, and then you can have two colors going at the same time instead of one color all the time.
Yeah.
And you can take that as far as you want with it, but yeah, I've done it twice on my truck, and I've had buddies ask me to help on theirs, and I say I will help you with anything else, just not that. But then I've got another really good friend who he loves doing them. He's done 4 or 5 for other people now. I'm like, dude, I could not, absolutely not.
I don't have the attention span for it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff, man. So, I think that's it. I appreciate you joining in with us. We will keep you posted once this gets put up on the great wide world of internet, and
Yeah,
it'll be chopped up and posted here and there. But I think the bulk of it we will put as one long video on YouTube as well. Just anybody who wants to watch the whole thing, we'll chapter it
yes,
up.
I'd love to advertise it. So as soon as it comes up, even like clips and bits and pieces and everything, I'd love to put out on all my social media as well. So
We will
definitely a
make
cool
sure
thing to be
and
a part of.
we will keep you in that loop. And hey, good luck with the new TikTok. You're off to a good start. And as always, man, if there's anything we can ever do to help you out, or if you got questions or whatever, like I've got all data, the pro all data thing. So like if you need technical information on your truck or whoever else's truck and you need something, like I'm happy to offer that.
Right.
Just however I can help. And did you say, and sorry, I talked to so many people, I kind of lose track. Did you say you were coming down to one of the truck meets in like Nashville or Pigeon Forge or something this year?
Yeah, so I'll be at Music City Showdown this year.
Okay.
It's like the second week in May or something like that. I haven't bought my tickets yet, but I will be there. That one's in Nashville, and then there's Smoky Mountain Truck Fest out in Pigeon Forge. I don't know if I'm going to make it to that one or not. I went this last year without my truck, and it was, and from my experience, it was okay, but it's really hard to go to a truck show and not bring your show truck with you.
Yeah.
And it was like a 14-hour drive from my place. So that's still up in the air, but I will be in Nashville that second weekend in May, though, for
Okay.
sure.
Cool. Well, I will put that on my calendar. Maybe I can make it out there and we can shake hands and
That'd be awesome. So I will have the truck with me for that. And then Alex Valentini will also have his truck there. So he's got the grill bars and your guys' headlights. And then I don't know if you guys have ever worked with Darian Stum. I don't know if you worked with him as well. Yeah. So Darian's my absolute best friend. Us three will be there.
Follow up with him. Have you seen Darian Stum on the sponsor list? Is he still on? Okay. Yeah, I know the name and I know the truck, but cool. No, it'd be great because I know it's been interesting to see like who's popped up with sponsors and whatnot, and like how there's this like circle of all you guys in the Midwest that kind of know each other and have like a similar passion for all this stuff. So yeah, Nashville is only 2 hours from us, so it's not a bad
That's
drive.
not too bad. Yeah.
So I should be able to make it out if the stars align with all the other stuff. So
yeah, so it's about 11 and a half, 12 hours for me. So it's a little more of a drive, but it's definitely that was my favorite show last year for sure. It was a lot of fun.
I did 2 trips in 22 with my dad. We went to South Bend, Indiana, which was an 11-hour drive, and then we went to Chicago, which was a 13-hour drive. We did both of those that year, so done that enough of that to after the 13-hour drive to Chicago, Dad and I had a long time to talk about all the car shows that were closer than Chicago that we could go to. We're like,
yeah, so that one in
that
that one in Pigeon Forge, I drove about 4 hours to Darian's place there in Missouri, and then rode the rest of the way to Pigeon Forge with him. And I mean, we're very close friends, but we definitely learned some more things about each other. Because I did the math, and that Thursday to Sunday, we spent over 30 hours in the truck together. So
Yeah.
it was a lot of seat time, but yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes that's a fun thing. So, anywho, cool, man. Well, good luck with school and good luck with the TikTok thing. And again, I appreciate you hanging out with me and chatting, and it was nice talking to you.
Yeah, you too, definitely.
All right, man. Take care. We'll be in touch.
Yep. See ya.
See ya.